Hi there. I'm going to do a series of kind of video diaries, which I hope will cover many of the aspects of recovery. I want to do a kind of diary, if you like, of some things I've done myself, because I want to try and show you the kind of situations and experiences that you need to seek out so that you can progress towards your own recovery. Now, I got the use of I ditched my old webcam because it was really getting a bit past it. So I've got my new HD high definition one, so if the size of my old face in HD is too much, then please do look away. Now, there are so many different aspects, so many different obstacles that people can encounter when they're trying to recover from anxiety. And now, when I talk about recovery, I'm talking about using the Claire Weekes method, because as I've often said, that has been the only one out of all the different ways I've looked at over the years that is one that works, one that I know other people have used to recover by. So I hope that at least some of you out there will have gone and looked for Claire Weekes' publications or audios and all the stuff that she wrote, and hopefully you will have understood what she was saying, and you may be trying it out for yourself to see how you get on. Now, I think the main thing that Claire Weekes did, certainly for me, and I know this is true for many others, is she fully explained what you were experiencing. Somebody in an anxiety state, she went into great detail explaining what was happening, why it was happening, and of course, importantly, what to do about it. And it always comes to mind when I say that so few people are ever given explanation as to why they are as they are. And any doctor could do this for any patient. Simply explain what their nervous system is doing, why they're getting all this anxiety, and what it all means. But in all the years I've seen doctors, not one has ever done that for me. And in fact, every single doctor I've ever spoken to hasn't even heard of Dr. Weekes. And it's a tragedy really, because so many people, if they were simply told what was happening to them at the outset when they first go and see the doctor, so much suffering could be spared. And it seems to me that the only treatment that is offered is some form of medication. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against medication for people who are in a seriously sensitized state, and I've used it myself, to some effect. But it's not a cure. It can control things for people. It can make things easier for them by dampening down the feelings they're getting. But it's not, never has been in my book, a cure. And I mean, that is another aspect of it which doctors, if they do understand it, they certainly don't let on about it, is this question of sensitization, where every anxiety symptom, feeling is exaggerated, grossly exaggerated, and it can come over the slightest little thing. And this is why I think some doctors, in fact many doctors, don't really appreciate just what an anxiety sufferer is going through. It's quite possible that a lot of them would just look at it in terms of what they themselves have experienced. And based on that, they won't have a clue of just how bad these anxiety feelings can be, which doesn't help with their treatment of you and the way the way you are actually treated as a person. And I experienced a certain amount of this kind of, not prejudice exactly, well, I suppose it was in a way, but it was nothing a doctor could really grasp, nothing a doctor could really understand, like a physical condition. And as such, although they would sort of go along with what you're telling them, they weren't really interested ever in explaining the various things you're having, or just giving you more information. So many people feel that they're on their own, and fortunately we do have the internet now, which provides so much more information. And I just really wanted to get that off my chest, because people have it's become very clear to me that all you kind people who have responded to my videos and commented on them, it's just very clear how many of you, all this information is new. You've not been told this before, or you might have been told it not in a complete way. And what I want to do with these videos, and what I've wanted to do all along, is to give enough detail, enough information, and to give you examples from my own experience, so that you do understand what is actually happening. And more to the point, like I said, you know what to do about it. So, after that kind of lengthy preamble, there's certain aspects to recovery which people always seem to have problems with. And if you understand the basis of what Claire Weeks is saying, if you understand the logic to it, if you understand what it is you're doing and why, I mean, that is half the way there, because you have an understanding then, and it makes it that much easier to practice what she advises. And this is a key thing. This is something else I've noticed with people. If they try using this method, they go about it in a kind of competitive way. They have to prove something to themselves. They test themselves, basically. And that is not the way to do it, because if you test yourself, you're putting yourself under additional pressure, and you're already under enough pressure as it is. You don't need any more. Testing increases tension, it increases stress levels. You don't need that. So you're going about this in a totally different way, which is a practicing way. You're just going out and doing the things that you need to do, but you're only practicing. So if it doesn't work out as you would have wished, it doesn't matter, because you can practice again the next time. And this makes it so much easier to accept all that happens while you're in this recovery stage, because it's this makes for another point, which is people always assume that if they're recovering, their anxiety feelings will start to go away. Now, this is what happens ultimately if you go about it the right way. But people don't consider anything they do to be a success if they have anxiety feelings, and especially if they have intense anxiety feelings. But I should talk about that a bit more in a minute, because this is crucial to understanding what you need to do, and I'll give you a couple of examples from my own recent experience that show you what I've done and how I've gone about it, so that you hopefully can look at situations in your own life and see how you can apply what I'm saying to your own situation. Now, one of the core things to Claire Weeks' teaching is that you have to go and face the things that currently frighten you. As she used to put it, the only way out of fear is through it. So, at the moment, if you've not practiced this way, you'll probably do as much avoidance as you can do. You try and you think of everything in terms of how much anxiety you're going to experience, so you avoid things so that you don't have to experience these terrible feelings. Now, so this is this is what you're aiming to do. You do it in at a pace that suits you. You don't force anything. You certainly don't wait and hope that you're going to feel like doing it. Wait and hope that the feelings themselves will die down a bit before you attempt this. That's not really going to help, because the whole purpose of practicing this way is that you lose your fear of the way you feel. And you do that by repeatedly putting yourself into situations that make you have these feelings. And if you do that enough, you will eventually see that these feelings really do not matter, and they can't harm you. Nothing terrible is going to happen to you. And once you practiced enough, you will see that for yourself. You will experience that for yourself, and that's when your confidence really begins to grow, because then you'll see that you've been bluffed by all these feelings into avoiding too much in your life. Now, a couple of things I did. Now, recently, my garden. It's going to sound a bit trivial, but I mean, to me, it was quite a big thing to do. I've never been much of a gardener, but over the last couple of years, when I had my stroke two years ago, I'd done hardly anything on the garden. I just couldn't do it, and basically it turned into a huge jungle of brambles and weeds and just a horrible mess. And through the winter months, I used to look at it and I was thinking, what am I going to do about that? How can I ever do anything about it? Because I knew that if I attempted it, I was going to experience all the things that I dislike so much, most notably the dizziness, the lightheaded feeling like my balance is going. This is what put me off from even attempting it. However, I thought, well, I keep going on to others about, do this, do that. So it's no good saying all that if you don't do it yourself. So I thought, well, I've got to make a start somehow. So, as if we've headed into spring now, and it's got a bit lighter and a bit warmer, I thought, well, perhaps I'll just make a start. I'll just try it for a little while, perhaps half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, see how I get on. So that's what I did. I ignored most of it. I thought, well, I'll just concentrate on one little bit at a time and chop things down and put them into bags. And there was a lot of bending down involved, a lot of turning around, which, my balance felt really off. I felt like I was going to fall over. I was just going to topple over at times. But I thought, well, the only way I could overcome this fear of it is just to keep going. So that's what I did, and I did about 3/4 of an hour session, and I stood back and looked, and I thought, well, that's quite a bit. That's quite a lot I've done just in that short time. So, bit of confidence. Simple little thing, but it gave me a bit of confidence. So, over the coming days, when the weather was okay, I went out and did some more. In the space of a couple of weeks, I managed to clear half the garden. It's quite a long garden we've got, and the brambles were about 10 feet high in places, just ridiculous. But I cut them all down, I put them all into bags. I took all the bags to the recycling place, so everything was cleared up. And when I got to that halfway point, I thought, well, this is a point to stop and just, look at what you've achieved. There's still a lot more to do, but, that was the bit I wanted to do. And I felt really quite pleased with myself. I know, it sounds like quite a trivial thing, but I'd built it up in my mind as being something too difficult for me to even attempt, simply because I knew the way I was going to feel while I was doing it. Yet, in spite of this, and all the different sessions I did, perhaps an hour, 2 hours each time, yes, I did feel pretty weird at times. I did feel like I was going to topple over. I did feel like my balance was going, especially the sort of bending down a lot. That seems to do it. But I still did it. And it was, at the end of it, I thought, this is marvellous. You know, I can do these things. I've proven to myself I can do something that I previously avoided. And although I hadn't felt very good at it while I was doing it, it didn't matter. I still managed to do it. And so this is the approach. It's looking at the things that you avoid right now. I mean, you don't have to do anything spectacular. You know, you could just do simple things that you've been putting off, but you'd like to be able to do them, but you're too afraid because of the way you're going to feel. And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be anything. I mean, you don't have to aim high at the outset. You just do simple little things. Like there's I've talked about David Johnson's Freedom from Fear program, and he talks in one of his recordings. He talks about agoraphobics and people that are literally trapped inside their own homes. And he explains how you gradually start to extend what you can do. So he says, you know, for somebody who really literally is housebound, they can start by just opening their front door. Just opening their front door and looking outside and then closing it again. Or if they want to do a little bit more, they can open their front door and step outside. Just look around and then go back in. Simple things, just at a pace that you can manage. You're not going to force anything doing it this way. You're going to do things, as Claire Weeks used to say, as willingly as you can. Willingly experience these things. And you just do it, you know, a gentle sort of practicing approach. Nothing frantic, nothing hectic, nothing rushing. You don't rush to do these things. You do it at a steady pace. And this is what I did with my gardening. Now, the other thing I've done, which is something again which I've thought about for a long time, which I did actually do briefly a couple of years ago, and it's to do with my business, because I run a business repairing computers, which, you know, when I had my stroke in 2013, I lost a whole load of business, and I've been trying since then to get some of it back within the limits of what I can physically do now. And I tried various things, so I thought one thing I hadn't done much of is to try using leaflets, put leaflets through people's doors. Now, where I live is quite densely populated, so there's a lot of houses in the immediate area, so there's plenty of scope for this. Again, I was looking at what it actually physically involved, and for me, walking about is the hardest thing I have to do, because my balance seems most noticeably off when I'm doing it. And the thought of going from house to house, stuffing things through letterboxes and turning around, going to the next one, I thought this is something I can't do because my balance is too bad, and if I keep trying to do it, I'm going to fall over or, you know, pitch over in somebody's front path or something. All sorts of imagination, all sorts of things my imagination had conjured up as to why I couldn't do this. Plus, another thing was that the last time I had done it, which was in a very limited way, 2 years ago, it happened a few days before I had my stroke. So, in my mind, the two things kind of got connected. If I go and do leaflets, I might have another stroke, which, you know, if you just think about it, it's pretty stupid. But it was there, and that was yet another thing, another reason to avoid doing it. However, one Sunday afternoon, I printed off a batch of leaflets, about 50. I thought, well, I'll just go out and practice doing this. You know, there's houses up the road I could try, and I just spent about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and then, you know, delivered about 50 leaflets. And yes, I was very lightheaded, yes. My balance felt really bad, but I didn't fall over. I didn't pitch into somebody's front door or trip over on their path or anything like that. I took it slowly and gently, and at the end of it, I thought, well, I've done it. It wasn't very pleasant. The way I felt wasn't very pleasant, but I still did it. And subsequent to that, I had further sessions. I went slightly further afield. I didn't feel great on any of the occasions I did it. I would admit that. It was hard to do. It was hard to motivate myself to do. But I thought, well, I've done it before, I can do it again. So that's what I did several times. And at the end of a couple of weeks of that, I delivered nearly 200 leaflets, which didn't sound very much, but you try stuffing 200 leaflets through 200 letterboxes, it's quite a bit of work involved. So those are just two fairly sort of trivial examples of the kind of things you can do, things that you want to do, but you just feel too afraid to even try. And while you're doing these things, you've got to be willing to let whatever feelings arise, let them come. And that's what I did. And that's what I did on both things. Dizziness, lightheadedness, balance problems, that's the biggest problem I have at the moment. And if I readily admit throughout these videos that I'm not cured. At this stage I'm probably about 60-70% of the way there, but there's still this balance problem which I've still yet to overcome. Now I've said before that some of this balance problem is obviously due to the stroke after effects because it affects my eye movement, but it's not the majority. The greater part of it is not that. It's the greater part of it is just anxiety, fear over balance problems, fear over what might happen. This is something I still need to work my way through, and this is why I have gone out and deliberately done these things, because I know that if I do it often enough and keep repeating this practice, gradually I will stop seeing this balance issue as being a threat. I know that the only way I can get confidence in feeling that way is to actually go out there and do things in spite of having these balance issues. So that's the basis of why I do it. I think, well, I can't just wait and hope my balance is better, or wait for a day when it feels less bad. It's no good doing that, because that day never comes. Just the thought in the past, just the thought of going out, and I've talked about this before, the thought of going out, putting my shoes on and my coat on to go out, and then my balance used to automatically start to go off. I used to feel lightheaded, I used to feel strange, floaty, just, wow. That's how it was. And the more I do this kind of thing, I'm going to continue in my garden, I'm going to continue with these leaflets. I will think of other things that I currently avoid and do those as well. You see, this is hard to do. It's a very simple principle of why you're doing it, because you're getting used to the feelings, you're coming to accept that the feelings are there, and as you do this, as you start to gradually lose your fear of these feelings, this sends this message to your nervous system. The message says, there's no need for you to be so active. There's no need for it, because this is not something that's just dangerous. These feelings are not dangerous, they are not a threat. And gradually, your nervous system gets this message, and it starts to turn the volume down, if you like. This is how you desensitize. You put yourself into these situations and practice. Now, in the beginning, if you've avoided a lot of stuff for a long time, practicing this way is going to make you a bit more sensitized, but only temporarily, just temporarily, as you begin. And but ultimately, the more you do it, the feelings themselves will start to calm down. Now, it's interesting how the things that bother you the most change over time. Now, before I had my stroke, balance and dizziness wasn't really an issue for me. I didn't have any great problems with it. Occasionally I used to get a few seconds of vertigo where everything used to revolve. But the reason for that was usually earwax problems. I used to get a lot of earwax problems, which was a physical condition. But generally speaking, I wasn't bothered about balance, and I wasn't bothered about lightheaded, dizzy feelings, because it was, wasn't a problem then. There are other things instead that I used to fear, and there are other things that I used to go out deliberately with those feelings there and practice doing things with it all happening. And I've talked to some extent about these other things too, but it's so strange how these things change over time. And once you overcome one, it's quite possible that some other issue will appear. Gradually you desensitize to all of them. Time was that I used to have a big problem with headaches. Excuse me. Mustn't talk so fast. Yes, headaches. I used to get constant headaches, and every time I considered going out and doing certain things, I used to get a headache, and it used to get worse if I had one, or one used to come on. And I used to avoid it again because I thought every time I do these things I'm going to get this wretched headache, and I don't want it. I've had enough headaches. So it's the same thing again, a different symptom, but the same principle, same issue. Fearing something, avoiding situations because you fear that something, whatever it is. And as I keep saying, the only way out is through it. Now, it doesn't have to be physical symptoms. It could be all kinds of strange mental experiences that you can have. I've talked about this on my other videos, but it's the feelings themselves can be so weird that you can't even adequately describe them, not even to yourself. Like for example, sometimes, and I'm pretty sure I know why, but sometimes I feel so very weird in my head. That doesn't really tell you anything, just say weird in your head. What does that mean? It's a kind of disconnected feeling. It's a kind of... see, I can't find the words to describe it. It's just a strange feeling. It's all right, Mowgli's come in again to help me. A strange feeling, Mowgli the cat. I had it yesterday for a while, and I just felt weird and out of it. And a strange feeling of foreboding, like something bad was going to happen. And nothing bad did happen, but it was just a feeling that can come on quite suddenly. And that, along with unreality, feeling disconnected, feeling you're not really there doing whatever it is you're doing, these feelings can be just as frightening as the physical ones, in fact more so sometimes. So there's all these things, you're going to go and do the things where you're likely to experience whatever it is. And in doing so, like I say, you're going to prove to yourself that it's harmless. You're not going to come to any harm because of it. Nothing's going to, whatever your frightening thoughts are telling you, none of it's going to happen. It's just silly thoughts, and I'll talk about that separately, because I've already done videos on that, because it's quite a big area to cover. So, here you are. That's my recent efforts, and I think you've got the idea by now. I hope you have. And I shall continue with more examples just to hopefully just illustrate what I'm talking about here, and give you some ideas as to what you can do for yourself. But, you know, it does work. And I've proven it to myself that it does work with the things that used to bother me that don't bother me anymore. Not least of which is panic, which I've talked about on my other videos. And you don't have to be a special kind of person to do any of this. This is the thing. Anyone can do it. Anyone in an anxiety state can do this. Anyone. I mean, I'm not a brave person by any stretch of the imagination, but I still did it. I still did these things. So anyway, that's about it for now, and I'll talk on another video before young Mowgli down there comes and jumps on my keyboard and switches me off. I better leave it there, but please, however small an effort you make, just make the attempt. Just practice the attempt. Any little thing, it doesn't matter, it all counts. However trivial it might seem to you, just do it anyway. And that's how, you know, it starts with small steps. And you get confidence, and you build on that confidence, and you take bigger and bigger steps. Anyway, like I said, before Mowgli interrupts me, I'll leave it there, but please have a go. You've got nothing to lose, you've got everything to gain, because this is you heading towards your own recovery. Anyway, thank you as ever for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.